Does Vladimir Putin want to end the war? I know what you're thinking. Which one? In Gaza, Putin wants an immediate ceasefire. In Ukraine, he is the aggressor. But could he be softening his position? And here's why I ask. Yesterday, the G20 leaders held a virtual meeting. It was like a follow-up to the summit in New Delhi. And since it was virtual, Putin attended it. Listen to what he said.
Yes, of course, military actions are always a tragedy for specific people, specific families, and the whole country. And of course, we must think about how to stop this tragedy. By the way, Russia has never refused peace negotiations with Ukraine. I understand that this is war. Human losses cannot but shock.
Two things to note here. Number one, Putin said we must think about stopping the war. He says Russia has never refused talks. And number two, Putin did not say special military operation. He called it a war. Now put together, what does it mean? Frankly, with Vladimir Putin, you can never be sure. Maybe he's softening his position, or maybe he's pulling a bluff. There is only one way to know. To look at the political and military situation around the war, let's start with the battlefield. Most of the action is around the Dnipro River. Its eastern bank is held by Russia. And since June this year, Kiev has been trying to take it back. For 5 months, they had no success. Their counteroffensive was stalled. Then last week, things changed. Kiev says it pushed Russian soldiers back by 8 kilometers. Some of their armored vehicles also crossed the river. So now Ukraine has a foothold in the eastern bank. It's probably the first success of the counteroffensive. Is that why Putin is talking about peace? It seems unlikely, because one battle does not determine anything. After all, Russia still holds 20% of Ukraine's total land, so it could be one factor, but it's certainly not the only factor. Then we come to the politics of it. American support for Ukraine is shaky right now. The US Congress is holding up aid packages. So the European Union is stepping up, or at least trying to step up. They have drafted long-term security commitments for Ukraine. What does that mean? More funding, more training, and more help for Ukraine's defense industry. You see, long-term commitments offer stability, something that America's aid packages have lacked. The question is, will the EU members agree? Will they be able to pull it off? Their diplomats will discuss the proposal over the weekend. The heads of state will hold talks next month. I guess the point is, Ukraine is not collapsing. The West will keep this war running. But can Vladimir Putin afford that? His domestic situation is challenging. If you ask the Kremlin, Russia's economy is booming. They will say, what sanctions? But in reality, things are more serious. A leading Russian economist has confirmed this. He says most Russians are now living on low wages. It's not surprising, though. Russia's central bank has hiked interest rates to 15%, meaning more debt for people. Their currency, the ruble, is also sliding. In June last year, $1 was equal to 57 rubles. And now it's almost 89 rubles. Last month, it was more than 100. So the currency is sliding and it is volatile. And this is shaping Russian public opinion. Let me show you what a recent survey found. 48% Russians wanted Moscow to end the war, 48%, to pursue peace talks. And 39% wanted to continue the invasion. Now, this survey was done by the Russian Field Company. They've been doing such polls since the invasion began, but the latest one is special. It's the first time more Russians wanted peace than war. Could that be playing on President Putin's mind? He has an election next year. The victory seems certain. There could be more drama, maybe protests or opposition campaigns. And ideally, Putin would like to avoid that. And finally, there's the question of foreign support. Putin's biggest ally is China, but right now, China's own economy is in dire straits. It's so bad that Xi Jinping is patching up with Joe Biden. He visited the US last week. He asked for a reset with Washington. And that's not good news for Putin. He prefers China and the US to be at conflict. So let me recount the factors at play here. Ukraine is making small military gains. Europe could plug America's funding gap. Russia's economy is showing signs of strain, and the people want peace. If you're Vladimir Putin, that's a signal to wind up the war. But like I said, you can never be sure. If only these leaders would take their own advice, Putin should take his advice on Gaza and use it in Ukraine, and Biden should take his advice on Ukraine and use it in Gaza. As far as wishes go, it seems like an impossible one.